Steve here with ICRPG behind the DM screen. In this episode, we will be discussing alignment. Not really in ICRPG per se, but it's certainly a classic for a lot of other role-playing games. The question is, for ICRPG, can alignment be done? Should it be done? I say yes to both. Like and subscribe. Those of us who have been in role-playing games for a long time understand alignment, but it's not really in ICRPG, and this channel is also for newcomers, not just to ICRPG, but also to the hobby of role-playing games in general. So if you're not familiar with what alignment is, essentially it is your character's moral compass. So I think that's the best way to describe it. Certainly, if you have other ways to describe it, comment below. But that's how I always look at it. Your character's moral compass. In classic D&D, there is a table of 9 alignments. Essentially, you have everything from lawful to chaotic and good to evil. And there's in-betweens on there. So to put it in perspective or to give more of a visual, I'm going to give 3 examples to follow. So go ahead and pause the video on those samples. I'll let them run for about 5-10 seconds each, but it'll kind of show you what alignment is really about. The first one is just going to have it in very simple terms. The second one is kind of funny. And then the third is a little more descriptive for those who kind of need examples on what those things are. So again, feel free to pause. This first example simply tells you what the alignments are. You can look over that graph and see, and it should be pretty straightforward. This second one is for the more visual. I like the idea of the sandwich bread wrapper. I mean, hey, who's going to leave it open? That's just evil. And this third example gives a description on how one would deal with an orphanage per se, but it actually does make a whole lot of sense, and it kind of gives you more insight into what alignment psychologically is all about. I understand that some people would not feel that alignment is necessary for ICRPG, and I'm not saying that it's necessary, but I think it's good. For me, alignment really helps people stay in character, because otherwise you kind of just can do whatever you want to do, but would that character really do that in that situation? And so the way I play alignment, or the way I'm going to play alignment in ICRPG, is again kind of that moral compass. And in fact, that's maybe what I'll even call it, is instead of alignment, call it the moral compass. Because that way I can award players those hero tokens or whatever little bonuses if they've done a really good job playing in character, especially if it costs them. And so that is where I think things really have to come together, in the acting part or the role-playing part of an RPG, right? If you watched my interview with Hankrin Fernale, the originator of ICRPG, pretty clear he's a paladin kind of character. He is lawful good all the way. That's how he's going to go about it, even if it's going to cost him greatly. And kudos to him. That's how you should play. I always play chaotic neutral, but those who know me know that that's kind of how I am. So again, I think alignment is really helpful in keeping people in character. Now, here's where I believe it can come in to a game situation. And for this, I'm going to call on one of my favorite board games right here, Lords of Waterdeep. I won't be explaining Lords of Waterdeep to you in this video, but I wanted to point out this thing right here. In the expansion to Lords of Waterdeep, the Skullport expansion, there is what is called corruption. And this is the corruption track. Now, corruption in that expansion is a way for you to have very big gains, but at a certain moral cost. And when you do those things, you gain a skull or corruption into your tableau or with your character. As more and more people do that, or as you do that, these things start to add up. So here it costs you -1 at the end of the game for every skull you have, -2, -3. So as it keeps going, it can add up quite a bit. If you end up having, say, 10 skulls and they're -9 each, you've just lost 90 points. So that's the essential principle, is that you gain corruption for doing these things that give you gain, but at a moral cost. Now, throughout the game, there are ways to redeem yourself. You can do certain acts that will remove a corruption from you. Now, that's the really cool part. So you kind of have to weigh out, like, okay, if my character does this, he's going to be corrupted. That's going to cost me. How does this play out in ICRPG? My proposed modification for including alignment in ICRPG is simply to add a corruption track, just like you have a mastery track on your character sheet. Now, as things go on in your campaign, if a character does something out of character, the DM can say, hey, that is not what that person would do. We're going to give you a penalization, a corruption, as as it were. And so what you can do then is, I haven't quite figured it all out yet, so I'd love to hear your comments below, is figure out, okay, at what cost? If you have X amount of these dings or corruptions or skulls or whatever it would be, what does that cost you? Does it mean perhaps every roll in this particular round is going to be a hard roll, or maybe roll at disadvantage, as we would say? Does it cost you? Maybe at a certain point of corruption, you end up losing a piece of loot, or something that may have been, say, a magical item that was blessed, that's removed, right? And so, of course, you'll have ways to redeem yourself along in the campaign. Maybe that character has to do a side quest. Maybe they have to do some errand for a widow or something like that to make penance, to remove that corruption so that it doesn't keep haunting them. Of course, the corruption side is one aspect to it, but there's also the positive side. As a DM, you can award bonuses or buffs or whatever it would be. Maybe it is a piece of loot, or if they're a magic user, maybe they get a scroll or something like that, or an extra slot, right? If they've done a great job playing in character when it costs them to do so. And I think that's probably the key. It's not just like, hey, you really played in character today. It was, hey, you really fell on the sword there. That was acting in character. That really cost you. Here's a bonus. And so as a DM, you have the freedom to do that. So there's the positive and the negative side. And I think that's why it's a good thing to have alignment, even in ICRPG. I don't think it'll slow the game down. I actually think it'll enhance it. And I really, really like alignment for that reason, because again, I think it just helps players stay in character. Well, there you have my thoughts on adding alignment to ICRPG. I would love to hear what you guys have to say. Maybe you've tried to add it into a campaign, or maybe it's something you haven't really even thought about. But please feel free to comment below. Also, let me know if there are other topics you'd like me to discuss on this channel. I'd be happy to do that. Thanks again for watching, and may your dice always roll with advantage.